red dust, everywhere. It clung to everything, even hope. The sprawling domes of the Red Dust Settlement, humanity's most ambitious Martian colony, seemed to shrink beneath the oppressive weight of the crimson sky. Usually a beacon of human endeavor today, fear choked the settlement's rhythm. A fugitive was loose, Mark Jenkins, a name whispered like a curse. A saboteur, a murderer, they called him. Accused of sabotaging the life support system of the colony's agricultural dome, Jenkins had become public enemy number one. Now he was on the run, swallowed whole by the unforgiving Martian desert. Commander Eva Rostova, hardened by years on Mars, steeled her nerves. Finding Jenkins was critical, not just for justice, but for the survival of the colony itself. He had vital knowledge, the location of a hidden water reservoir, crucial to the colony's survival. Every hour that passed, every grain of sand shifted by the Martian wind, chipped away at their dwindling hope. Rostova stared at the holographic projections of the surrounding terrain, barren, desolate, unforgiving, like hunting a ghost in a sea of red. But Rostova vowed to bring Jenkins in, no matter the cost. The lives of everyone in Red Dust depended on it. The airlock hissed, spitting out a squad of 6 clad in their pressurized suits. Rostova, at the helm, adjusted her visor. The Martian sun, a pale ghost compared to its Terran counterpart, offered little warmth. The hunt was on. 2 rovers, their 6 wheels churning up plumes of red dust, sped away from the settlement. Mounted on them, advanced scanners pulsed, searching for any trace of Jenkins. These were no ordinary rovers. Equipped with ground-penetrating radar and thermal imaging, they were the culmination of years of Martian engineering, designed specifically for this unforgiving terrain. Leading the second rover was Lieutenant Jian, his face grim behind the visor. A seasoned Martian explorer, Jian knew the dangers of the landscape as well as anyone. But this chase, this felt different. The stakes were higher, the prey more desperate. Days blurred into nights, the monotonous whine of the rover engines, the crunch of Martian dust beneath the wheels, the ghostly silence of the comms except for the occasional terse update. It was a relentless, nerve-wracking pursuit. But there was no sign of Jenkins. He was a phantom, swallowed by the red abyss. The rover lurched violently, throwing Rostova against her restraints. They had driven into a network of canyons, a labyrinth of towering rock formations carved by ancient Martian winds. The sensors were useless here, blinded by the towering rock walls. They had to proceed on foot. Each step in the low Martian gravity was a challenge, their suits clunky and cumbersome. The Martian air, thin and cold, bit at their exposed skin despite the thermal layers. The canyons were a death trap, a maze with no apparent exit. "He's leading us somewhere," Jian said, his voice a metallic rasp over the comm system. "He knows this terrain." Rostova nodded, her breath fogging up her visor. Jenkins was no fool. He had planned this escape, using the Martian landscape to his advantage. As they ventured deeper, the silence became oppressive. The only sounds were the hiss of their own breathing and the crunching of their boots on the red sand. It was a silence that screamed danger, a silence that spoke of hidden threats and an unseen enemy. Days turned into weeks. The relentless pursuit was taking its toll. The crew, weary and frustrated, battled the constant fear of the unknown. The Martian landscape, already hostile, seemed to conspire with Jenkins, hiding him from their scanners, swallowing their hopes in a sea of red dust. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of blood orange and violet, Rostova caught a faint signal on the long-range comms. It was Jenkins. His voice, a ghostly whisper, crackled through the static. "You'll never find me," he taunted, his words laced with a chilling confidence. "This planet, she protects her own." The signal died abruptly, leaving a deafening silence in its wake. Rostova felt a chill run down her spine. Was Jenkins delusional? Or was he privy to some secret, some understanding of Mars that eluded them? The Martian wind howled outside, a mournful, lonely sound. It seemed to carry with it a message, a warning whispered on the wind. But whether it was a warning to turn back or to press on, Rostova couldn't tell. The only thing she knew for certain was that the hunt was far from over. The next morning, they picked up a faint trail, a set of rover tracks, partially obscured by wind-blown sand. They were Jenkins. There was no mistaking the distinctive tread pattern. Hope surged through the crew, only to be met with a growing sense of unease. The tracks led them in a wide arc, back towards the red dust settlement. "He's playing with us," Jan muttered, his voice tight with frustration. Rostova stared at the holographic map, her brow furrowed. Jenkins was leading them on a wild goose chase, toying with them, buying himself time. But why? What was his endgame? He couldn't possibly think he could reach the settlement undetected, could he? The sun beat down on the rovers, the heat reflecting off the red dust in shimmering waves. The silence was broken only by the hum of the engines and the crackle of static on the comms. A sense of foreboding settled over Rostova. They were walking into a trap, she could feel it. But what choice did they have? The terrain changed as they pressed on, the flat, dusty plains giving way to a rugged, mountainous region. Jagged peaks, their summits shrouded in a perpetual haze, pierced the crimson sky. This was no place for rovers. Rostova made the call. They had to proceed on foot, their movements slow and laborious in the low gravity. But they had one advantage. Their suits, marvels of engineering, were equipped with a unique camouflage technology, allowing them to blend seamlessly with the Martian landscape. As they ascended a steep, winding path, they activated the camouflage, their forms shimmering, dissolving into the surrounding rocks and sand. They were practically invisible, ghosts moving through a red-tinged dream. They were hunters again, not the hunted. The silence was their ally now, cloaking their approach. Each step was measured, deliberate. They were closing in on Jenkins, the net tightening, or so they thought. The first sign of trouble came as a low growl, barely audible above the wind. Not mechanical, but organic. A shiver ran down Rostova's spine. It couldn't be. Not out here, not this far from the settlement. Then came the attack. A blur of movement, a flash of teeth and claws. One of the crew members screamed, his cry cut short as he was dragged down, disappearing into a cloud of red dust. Rostova caught a glimpse of the attacker, a creature of nightmares, reptilian, with razor-sharp claws and glowing red eyes. They weren't alone on this planet. Panic threatened to consume them, but Rostova, her voice cold and steady, rallied her team. They fought back, their laser rifles spitting beams of intense light. The creatures, 2 of them now, darted and weaved, their movements inhumanly fast. These weren't the sluggish, herbivorous creatures the scientists back at the settlement had assured them were the only life forms on Mars. These were predators, hunters, and they were hungry. The creatures finally retreated, melting back into the Martian landscape, leaving behind a trail of blood and dust. They had managed to fend them off, but at a terrible cost. They were down to 4, their confidence shaken, their fear palpable, even through their comms. As they regrouped, catching their breath, Rostova noticed something glinting in the dust. It was a small metallic object, partially buried in the sand. She picked it up, brushing the dust off its surface. A compass. But not just any compass. This one was old, its casing worn smooth with time, engraved with a single word: perseverance. Rostova's blood ran cold. This wasn't just a compass, it was a message from the past. She had seen this compass before. It belonged to the first colonists, the ones who had disappeared without a trace decades ago, the ones everyone believed had succumbed to the harsh Martian environment. But what if they were wrong? The compass pointed towards a narrow canyon, barely visible against the rocky terrain. Rostova's gut churned. This was it, the final confrontation. They entered the canyon, their weapons drawn, their senses on high alert. The Martian wind howled through the narrow passage, whipping the dust into a frenzy. The air was thick with tension, the silence broken only by the crunch of their boots on the rocky ground. And then they saw him, Jenkins, standing at the mouth of a cave, his back to them, staring out at the desolate landscape. He turned, a slow smile spreading across his face. He was unarmed, but there was a glint in his eye that spoke of danger. "You found me," he said, his voice echoing through the canyon. "But you were never meant to make it this far." He gestured behind him, towards the mouth of the cave. "She's been expecting you." Rostova's blood turned to ice. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that Jenkins wasn't talking about a person. He was talking about something else, something far older, far more powerful, something that had been waiting for them all along. A low growl echoed from the depths of the cave, sending shivers down their spines. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and then, from the darkness, emerged a creature unlike anything they had ever seen. A creature of immense size and power, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Rostova stared in horror as the creature advanced, its massive jaws open in a silent snarl. They were trapped, outmatched, outgunned. This was no ordinary manhunt. This was a fight for survival against an unknown and terrifying enemy. As the creature lunged, its roar echoing through the canyon, Rostova closed her eyes and whispered a silent prayer. Their fate, like the fate of all those who dared to challenge the secrets of Mars, hung precariously in the balance. The Red Planet had claimed another victim, but whether they would be its next conquerors or its next casualties, only time would tell.